guys, welcome to today's episode of Talking Decon. I am super excited to announce we have a great guest today. Her name is Hayleigh Davis, straight from the United Kingdom. And Hayleigh has one of the coolest jobs ever and probably one of the most curious jobs that people want to know the ins and outs. And we're going to ask her all these cool questions that you've wanted to know. What happens after you die and before everybody sees you at the funeral? So welcome, Hayleigh. It's so nice to meet you. Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. So kind of give us an idea of where you're from and kind of how you got into the mortuary business.
So I'm from like a little town in sort of like a countryside, but it's a busy countryside, if that makes sense. And yeah, I'm just a normal girl into my horses. I'm a mum. I've got 3 children. I'm literally, honestly, your typical just normal woman, just going about doing her daily business, except for that obviously my job is preparing the deceased.
Right.
And people get confused because they seem to have a stigma of what people should look like. And so when obviously little me comes up and explains what I do, people are taken aback. They think I'm speaking to ghosts essentially when I say, well, I see dead people every day. They seem to think I'm like some sort of psychic medium. And I'm there going, no, genuinely, I see them. So I got into the mortuary industry via, shall I say, working for a funeral director.
Okay.
And that was following the death of my father, but more recently the death of my baby.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In my own head, I had all these horrible images in my head because one thing people kept saying to me is, we're taking care of your loved one. We're taking care of your father. We are taking care of, your little girl. And I'm there going, how? How could you possibly, nicest possible way, what are you doing for them? That's caring for them.
Right.
They're deceased.
Right. What does that mean?
It was just my own torment, I think. And it got to the point where I was like, do you know what? Just out of curiosity, I'm just going to try. And it took me a long time to get into the industry, I can assure you. It took me a long time. But when I did, I was so shocked because I don't think people realize just how much care genuinely goes into looking after a deceased person.
So how do you get into the mortuary business in the UK?
It's very different from America because in America, you need to go to school, I believe, don't you?
Yes.
College, university, you have to do everything. To join the funeral service in the UK, you don't need any qualifications. It's all done on job training.
Okay.
And it does take a while. It's not something that you can just go in and be let loose. You have to do shadowing. Then you have to, there are protocols in place. But yeah, it's nothing like people would imagine it to be because people do think, oh my God, it's going to be at least 2-3 years at university. But it's really not. You don't even need any experience whatsoever.
So when you figured that out, was your approach basically, I need to find a funeral home that will take me as an apprentice?
No, I didn't even start as an apprentice. I went in as a funeral service operator.
Okay.
So that is basically covering all aspects of the funeral, except for the director side of things. And I just got a job that way. Like I said, it took me a while. And I was surprised because I was thinking, oh, wow, this is actually quite eye-opening. People wouldn't necessarily think this happens. And I have to be honest, my demons that I had from losing my close relatives were put to bed within 2 or 3 weeks.
Really? In what way?
Seeing how people generally care for the deceased, I know the signs are horrendous. I always thought they were kept in cold storage. That's it. But they are checked daily. We do check their deterioration daily. We do wash them. We do present them lovely. We don't just leave them as they are. We do try to present them in a lovely way. Even if they're not being viewed, we will still make them look, presentable is the word I'm going to say. And there is care. You always speak to them. You always address them by their last name. Or if they, families say, well, don't call them by their last name, like their first name. We generally show so much care for them. It's like we don't think of them that they've passed away. They're still people to us. And that was something that really struck with me because you wouldn't necessarily think that.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what your initial training was like the first time that you had to dress a body? Are you also doing the embalming or is that a separate person? Talk to us about the process.
So with the dressing, like I said, you have to shadow people first. They don't just let you go ahead and do everything.
Correct.
You do have to watch people, and you do have to sort of figure out your own little ways you're helping. And then once you're left to do it with somebody else, normally there's two people to dress. Now, the biggest one for me is, sadly, from my first dressing, it was a lady who wanted to be in her wedding dress. Now, I thought that was going to be a piece of cake. I thought, oh, dress, lovely. No, I was really, really, really taken back by that. It took 4 people in the end.
Oh, wow.
Because this dress was not, and we didn't want to cut it. That was the thing. We didn't want to cut it. So once we got the dress on, we then realized that she had like sort of like a shoulder veil as well. I think I probably cried because I was thinking, oh no, we had her in such a perfect position to be able to slip that round, and we didn't realize. So that was probably a bad experience.
Well,
because
let me ask you, so what is difficult about dressing the deceased? Is it rigor mortis, or is there more?
When that sets in, that is difficult because you can't maneuver their arms, their hands. It's really difficult, and you have to be delicate. You can't just treat them as if you're dressing like a Barbie doll or something like that. This is a person. This is somebody's loved one, and you have to be delicate. Sadly, if they have what's called skin slip, which essentially the skin starts slipping away from the deceased, it can be really, really difficult because one wrong positioning of your hands can cause quite a lot of damage. And that's quite sad to see. When that happened to me for the first time, it freaked me out. And I thought I'd broken the person, and I was crying for probably about an hour.
I remember the first time that I saw that myself. It was when I was a police officer, and the mortuary transport came to pick up the body, and they grabbed him by the arms to put him in the bag, and they had a total skin slip on it.
Yeah, it is like
degloving.
Coming off.
Yes.
But it is skin.
Right.
And it's quite distressing to see, as I'm sure you can imagine, because it's not like things you see in the movies.
No.
You're there going, this is actually a person. And I've actually just seen this on a real person.
Yeah, it really is. But another thing that most people don't realize is that when you pass, your body fills up with gases. And eventually you'll pop. And if you're not found, or the wrong temperature, it's too hot, you'll just decompose quicker, correct?
Yes, you do. Now, we find people who are in a sitting up position at home, be it in an armchair or in bed, that once you move them, they can, as you say, go like a pop or a very quick deflate, shall I say, without being graphic, very quickly. And there's only certain ways that can come out. And if it comes out, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but if it comes out via the mouth and nose, that is heartbreaking because it does alter the facial features as well. Also, if it's a bigger person, as you can imagine, it can actually have quite a nasty effect on the whole body, and you can get seepage through sores. People don't realize that actually it can come through the skin as well. It's not necessarily just certain areas of the body. Now, when that happens, normally we like to call aspirate. So we like to do it in a surgical way. So that is controlled. When it's not controlled, as I'm sure you've seen plenty of times, it is quite traumatic.
Yeah. I was going to ask you kind of, what's your procedure for preparing a person when they've been pretty badly decomposed? Is that even possible?
Not always, no. So we have what's called a level 1, which is just no. That's a no-go. That's pretty much liquid. You're not. If I was to say to you, chunky soup consistency,
right.
That's a level 1. Then we got to level 10. Anything 4 and under, you're just going to do more damage to the deceased. And we have to think of their dignity, but equally we have to think about the family, and that can cause quite a bit of trauma to them to see that, because it's not something they should see at all. And you have to weigh up. An M-bomb's not going to correct that. If you've got severe skin slip, you've got purging, and you've also got mold. A lot of people don't realize just how much mold a body can get over time.
Right.
You've got to weigh up, is there any point being intrusive for the sake of nothing? And in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, it's no. Just leave them to be closed coffin viewing, and still say your goodbyes, but sadly with a lid on.
Okay. So what about incidences where there's traumatic injuries or suicides or stuff, do you feel almost like you're an artist at that point trying to reconstruct them?
It's hard. Now, I've been very honest on my TikTok. I do wax work, so I do remodeling, and that was about a 7-month course I had to do. It wasn't something that you just learn on the job. That is because it is a skill. Now, I'm still no good at sort of completing ears.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I just struggle to get the angles right. So in that case, if it's something to do with the ears or that side of the face, I do get somebody else to help me
Okay.
because it don't look right. But normally, if it's cheeks, forehead, nose, you can build them probably about an hour and a half.
Really? That's interesting. And it's all out of wax?
Wax makeup, we use Dodge. I'm sure you've heard of the Dodge makeup kit.
No, I haven't.
Absolutely love them because with
Okay.
wax, I love it. Absolutely love it. And you can get skin tones, you can lighten it, sort of put a bit more to it, and it just doesn't do any damage. It's fantastic.
Okay. So what are some of the, I guess, cases that you've done that really stay with you, that you really just, for whatever reason, made an impact on you?
The gentleman who walked out in front of a train,
Okay.
that was the first time I had to seek therapy for that one. I did have a little bit of an issue walking back into the mortuary because I thought, in my head, I thought it's going to be fine. You know, I can do this. Other people's doing it. It's going to be fine. But they don't bring them in a body bag. They bring them in boxes and bags. So straight away, I was there going, oh, this isn't going to be a fully formed person. This is, so I built myself up for it. And then they kept bringing body parts out. And as you can imagine, it's not on a whole body part. It's splintered. It's really bad. And no, I couldn't do it. I felt like I was going to pass out. I essentially felt like I was going to faint because it dawned on me, this is somebody's son. This is potentially somebody's father, and they are never going to be able to say goodbye to this person.
Was the goal to put the body back together? Or
That's always the goal.
okay, even though the family knows what happened, they still want it to really. Okay. So it bothered you. Was someone else able to put the person?
No.
Okay.
No. Sadly, not all parts of the deceased were retrievable.
Okay.
And that's an issue.
Yeah.
Sadly, the top torso and from shoulders up, there just wasn't enough pieces to make up the skull, the face. It just would not have been doable.
Was this
even the best person in the world just wouldn't have been able to recreate that.
Okay.
It just wouldn't have been feasible.
Was this a suicide or was this an accident?
No, this was suicide. He'd left a video message for his parents and his wife.
Okay. So, when I was a police officer several years ago, we had an incident like this, but it was not a suicide. It was an individual that was walking on the tracks and had headphones in and could not hear the conductor pressing the horn. And he got hit from behind and thrown about 100 yards before the train could actually stop. But what was amazing about it is his body was fully intact. And when I went to the autopsy, he was laying on his back, and from the front, completely naked, it looked like there was absolutely not a scratch on him. But when you turned him over, all the blood had run to his back from the impact. Yeah, and it just pooled, and it looked like his entire back area from the toes to his head was black and blue, but the front area was completely normal. And it was extremely odd for me to see that, because you would think on a big impact like that the person would be in multiple pieces.
I was expecting you to say that you probably wouldn't have been able to reconstruct that person.
Yes.
He was intact. I mean, yeah, that's amazing, because it's not, the situation's very sad, but I guess his family were able to say goodbye, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, speaking of families, I'm assuming in you're in the years that you've been doing this, have you had to prepare a child? And what is the typical cause of death on that? Was some of it trauma, or was it, natural causes?
I've never had any suspicious cases with children. Anything like, we're not allowed to call them abuse or murders or anything. We call them suspicious. Never had anything like that, thankfully. We have had a car accident. We have had that was quite a sad one. And obviously we get a lot of stillborn babies and SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome as well. So I have dealt with that. And it is hard seeing babies, one from my own personal level, but secondly, it's because you cannot say to the parent, you're going to be okay, they're in a happier place. How can you say that? You can't say that. So the whole dealing with the family is a very different situation. You can offer them counselling, of course you can. You can put them in touch with all the people in the world. You're not going to take away that inner feeling, the physical pain of their child is now gone. And you have to handle them differently. If they want to scream at you, that's fine. You let them. You have to just let them. You are guided by the family. And sometimes some families choose they don't want to see their child, and that's fine. But then you always sort of just keep saying, if you do want to view, it's fine, because sometimes they don't know what to expect. And I think that's the scariest thing for them. A lot of people tend to want to come in every day, which, as I'm sure you're aware, sadly, the smaller the body, they decompose very quickly, very, very quickly. And if you're handling a baby every day, you're holding a baby to your warm body, we can see the changes, but mums and dads don't until the last minute. And then they tend to say, well, what's gone wrong? What's happening? Why is this happening? So you do have to try to be very delicate by saying we wouldn't recommend daily visits. But you can't turn a mother away from her child, or a father away from their child either.
So that brings up a really good question. So are you saying when a child passes away that it's common for the parents to want to visit the deceased child daily up until the actual funeral? That seems strange to me. That seems very strange to me, almost like it would be so traumatic to see your dead child like that.
So with me personally, my daughter, she was in a funeral directors for just over 10 days. It was 10 days. And I saw her 3 times during that point. First time, I think it was more to give her like her little clothes that I wanted on her, and her teddy. The second time, I had to go in there to make arrangements. So I thought I'd just go and have a little look at her. The third time, she didn't look like how she did before. So I knew that was my time then to go, no, like, that's it now, because I didn't want to see any more. And that's when I thought, well, she's not being cared for. They're telling me that she's being cared for, but she looks different. So how can she be? But sadly, they do deteriorate very quickly. And one of the biggest things to us is trying to explain delicately to a parent, I know you want to see your child every day. What parent wouldn't? But the changes are going to come in very quickly. And I personally think 1 or 2 viewings is fine, but that's just a personal thing on me. But daily, especially if you're handling the baby, because we can't stop them. We can't physically say to a parent, no, don't hold your child. But if skin slips in with a little baby and you've got a mum, and then you pull the baby away, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that's horrifying. Is it uncommon for SIDS cases or whatever? Do they not perform autopsies on the child, or they do?
Always.
So how do you cover the head?
So this is the thing. If they're little babies, we can have little hats.
Okay.
So we can put little hats on them. We always recommend little cardigans where we can have things up like this just to cover. The great thing with a baby, not the great thing, I've got to choose my words carefully here. With an adult, the incision is from the ear round to the ear.
Right.
It's a full half moon. With a baby, it's not as big because their bones are still really flexible. So if you've seen a baby autopsy, you would probably see that one side is more incisioned than the other. So they tend to go in a half present is the only way I can describe it. So, and that's because their bones are a lot more flexible compared to an adult skull that needs a bit of work to remove.
Yeah.
The babies don't take that much.
Yeah, that's horrifying. I can't imagine having to do that, even in your job or as a parent, to go and see your child deteriorate so quickly like that.
It's not nice. Like I said, my little girl Summer, she was in the funeral directors 10 days, and by the third time I visited, like I saw her, she had changed.
Okay.
She had changed.
And that was before you were in this profession, right?
I wasn't in the profession when I lost my baby,
Right.
no. So to me, I was thinking, well, how are they looking after her when she looks like that? How?
Right.
But now being in the profession, it's just natural for what our bodies do.
Now, when you're in your position now and you're working on a child, do you ever have any type of memory or regression from your own child?
Yeah, I cry. I do cry, especially if I got one, a little girl potentially who's coming and she's got little, because my little summer had little curls at the back, tiny little curls. And if I see the same thing, you go straight back into that room. You go straight back into that moment. But I have my little moment of a few little tears. We all do.
Yes.
Everybody I've worked with, we all have our own little, like, right, I'm just going to take 5 minutes. Then we carry on because we know we need to for the parents. We can have our cry at lunch. We can have our cry in the car at home when we get home. We can have our moment. But for this parent, we need to do this right now.
Okay.
And I know it sounds awful, but the quicker we can get this sorted, then we can put the baby to rest.
Okay.
And that's how we deal with that.
So let's talk about your social media now, Hayleigh. What was the idea when you initially thought, I'm going to share my experiences on social media? Kind of, how did you think it would be received, and what was your intent at the beginning?
So to begin with, when I first got into the job, people kept asking me, oh, is it true a body would sit up? Is it true that bodies can sort of put their arms up in the air? Is it true bodies can still make noises? And I was thinking, where do these rumors come from? Well, I have to be honest, the one that made me think, no, I need to get this sort of out there, was people seem to think that we cut male genitalia off to stop them springing up.
Oh my God, I've never heard that.
No, that was a new one for me. So as you can imagine, I went to my boss and I went, look, just to make sure that we didn't do this in the past time or something. He went, oh, you've heard that too. I went, yeah. I said, I think I want to do something. And he said, well, I'm not sure about social media. It's not something that we want on there. And I had to fight. I had to really put it to him. And I went above him and I was like, look, just myth busting. That's all I want to do. Maybe show a bit of equipment. They loved it. They were like, right, you don't do this. I had to sign a 3-page disclaimer to say what I'm not allowed to say. As you're aware, there's certain things you cannot disclose.
Right.
And that's fine. I did not expect to go as big as I have. No,
Wow.
I didn't expect that. That was a shock to the system. I expected a bit of hate because people grieving probably didn't want to see that.
Sure.
Probably didn't want to hear that. Totally respect that. But I have to be honest, it's been massively positive.
Yes.
And I think even now, I'm still scratching my head going, is this actually happening? I just didn't understand, or should I say I didn't know that people had the same feelings that most of us have. What happens when you pass away?
Right.
Because death is such a taboo subject. Nobody likes to think of their own time coming. People say to me, oh, you must be fine with death. No, I'm terrified of it. I don't want to die at all. I want to be immortal. But it's taken me back massively.
Okay, so you're a mortuary tech on TikTok, right? Is that your only social media, or do you post elsewhere? Okay.
I'm on Instagram as well.
Okay. So for us, our viewers that haven't seen your channel, can you give us an idea of what they would be seeing if they went to your channel on TikTok?
For me, it's mainly mortuary content. I might do a little bit of private stuff now and then, but it's mainly mortuary content. So you're going to see equipment that I use. You're going to see what we do on a day-to-day basis, different cases. I cover suicide, I cover homeless, I cover children. I also cover people who have, like, families who have died together, i.e. if they've died together in a car crash. I cover all different things. I have got a bit of dark humor on my page, which I don't think some people get, but doing the job we have, you've got to have something.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. You have to. Now, are you allowed to discuss the stories behind it? Not the names, not the identities, but the story. For example, if it was a homicide and it was, something, an interesting story about it, are you allowed to discuss that?
Within reason, as long as I don't disclose gender, age, or name. So Yeah, you can, and I've been very lucky. It's very clear what I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say. The biggest thing I'm not allowed to speak about, believe it or not, is COVID. That's a big no-no.
Are you serious? Wow. Because
Wow.
have
Because
you
have
guys
you
had a
guys
lot
had
of
a lot
deaths
of
due to
deaths due to
COVID?
COVID?
No, and that's so strange. Yeah.
Because I think what it was, I publicly put on one of my TikTok lives, you know, people were going crazy about COVID. Oh my God, you must have bodies everywhere. And I'm like, no, I really don't. All I said was, I don't see what the big fuss is about.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it is a global pandemic. I can see
Right.
what the fuss is about. But from the mortuary side of thing, I was
Right.
in that office 2.5 hours having the biggest telling off, as you can imagine. So that's a big no-no now. So we don't discuss COVID on my TikTok.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. So let me ask you, since how long have you been in the industry, the mortuary industry?
Coming up 5.5 years.
Okay, 5.5 years. You're still super young, 33 years old. Has being in this industry day in and day out for 5.5 years, has it changed your view on death?
No,
No. So what are your thoughts?
I'm terrified of dying.
Is that right?
Yeah, always have been. I think for me, being a mom, I don't ever want to feel like my children never going to have me. I want to feel that, you know what it's like. You want to see your children grow up, have their own families, and you want to be a part of that. I don't want my children to be lumbered with funeral bills or anything, because funerals are expensive.
Very
They're
much.
extortionate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I pass away, I have made it quite clear I don't want to be embalmed. Just put me in my fluffy slippers, my pajamas, my fluffy socks, and my dressing gown. Leave me be. Like, that's it. I want a direct cremation. I don't want a service. So I literally want a minimal funeral. But the actual thought of dying for me, I don't quite like it. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, that's super interesting because everyone that I speak to that is in your field or closely related to it, maybe first responders, they all feel very similar. They don't want a big hoopla. They don't want this big expensive funeral. They don't want to be embalmed. But many of them will either say cremation, or some of them will say, more of the buried at sea. That's becoming a bigger thing now. I don't know
I've
if you.
seen things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of in the essentially it's cremation and then just poured into the sea or location of your choice. But the different religions that you have to deal with. Like it's my understanding that the Jewish religion, they don't do embalming and they bury very quickly. Correct?
They actually dress their loved ones themselves as well. They are very, very, very hands-on. Pretty much, we take a step back. There's nothing intrusive done. We don't even seal the mouth. We don't suture anything.
Yeah.
That's a big no-no. And with the Muslims, it's obviously a very quick turnaround. And again, they take care of the deceased. So in that respect, it's like a family coming together. And I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely.
I generally think that's quite lovely.
Now, do they mostly, Jewish and Muslim, do they mostly get buried in the ground, or most of them cremated, or?
I don't have anything to do with cremations or burials.
Wow.
I literally am mortuary based.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
I don't recall taking a Jewish person into the cremation, so no.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Are there any other religions or maybe cultures that have different type of preparation that you can talk about?
Yeah, so we have a lot of traveller families, gypsy families over here, and they are super fantastic when it comes to caring for their deceased. They will have the deceased at their home, and they will have a wake at their home where they will dress the deceased, they will look after the deceased, and they will then allow the funeral director to take them to the funeral. It could be burial, cremation, and they are very much taking care of their own loved one. And again, it's lovely because it isn't just a family, it's a community.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me would be such a wonderful send-off because it's everybody you've known and loved come together. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. So what are the ages of your children and what do they think of what you do?
So my eldest is Isabel. She's 9. I've got Tommy, who's 7, and Holly, who's 3. they don't know too much. They think I'm a taxi service for heaven. So they think I'm taking the people up to the angels so the angels can take them to God. And I'm fine with that.
Right.
Absolutely fine. Isabel has started to prod a bit more questions, saying, well, what do the angels look like, Mummy? What do the angels, do they actually have wings? And I'm there going, no, not always. They look like me and you. And then she said, but how come the books in the Bible say they have wings? And I'm there going, oh no. You know, when you have to think on the spot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. What about your friends? What about your friends and your other family? What do they think about what you do?
My friends, they think I'm out of place because they're like, you don't look like somebody who works in a mortuary. Like, you don't. And I always say to them, well, what do you think we should look like? And they always say gothic, like black lipstick, Victorian dresses. And I'm there going, I'm literally, this is me. I don't, it's just who I am. And they think it's quite unusual to see somebody like me I'm only small in height. I'm only 5'2". And to be fair, I've not got the greatest stomach and I am quite emotional. So as you can imagine, they were like, well, you're going to need therapy.
Would you
they
say
were probably
Go ahead.
not as supportive to begin with?
Yeah, that's great. That's common. I think that people have an idea in their mind of what certain professions should look like, and of course, most of the time, it's not correct. Would you say that in your profession, is it 50-50 with women and men, or are women a minority?
No, I would say it's in the UK, it's still quite heavily dominated by male. There are a lot more women coming into it, which is fantastic. But I have to say, I was always welcomed with open arms. I've never met anybody that's been like, oh, it's a man's job. I've always been really welcomed by everybody. So the problem is, if you're coming into this line of work, a lot of young girls now, as beautiful as they are, wacky hair colors and eyelashes past their eyebrows, nails out here. I mean, I wear fake nails, so that's fine. But you're there going, how are you going to embalm somebody?
Right.
How are you going to wheel a deceased person in with somebody looking? And it's the image type of thing, I think, is what put people off hiring a lot of women. And I'm being bluntly honest with that. We had one a month ago who come in, and I knew straight away the poor girl wasn't getting the job just by visually. And my manager come in and said, no, she very much proclaimed that she was into her horror movies, but also said that, she will not stop having the fake tan. She was very, very, very glowing, shall I say. And yeah, her hair extensions were past her bottom.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, some people aren't fit for it, right? So one final.
They're not
Go
fit.
ahead.
I think it's just you're in a profession where you're going to be coming in contact with grieving families. How would you want somebody? I personally wouldn't want someone coming in looking like with low cut tops on, looking like they've just come off a catwalk.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that's what it is. I dress like an old woman, so I'm fine.
Right. So one final question, I guess. What is the biggest misconception that people have about what you do to prepare someone?
People think it's more barbaric than what it actually is. People think that we have got tubes coming out of everywhere, that we're using all manner of tools, and the incisions we make are so small. Like, have you ever seen an embalm be done?
Yes.
It's literally just there. It's so small. And I think a lot of people generally think it's a gory industry, that you're covered in blood all the time, and that it's got to be spooky. People automatically think we see ghosts because we're working with like the deceased, and that's not the case. It's not the case.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I believe there's something. I've never seen one, but there's things that happen, especially since we moved into this place, that I can't explain. And I don't know why, but I am generally scared. And I've got videos on my TikTok, actually, and my Instagram, of the chapel room where you can see things move quite clearly and there's nobody else in the room.
Wow.
And it's not even like a little subtle move. It's a move.
Yeah.
And that scares me because I've looked for fishing wire to see if my manager was playing a prank on me. I've looked for little things because they do play pranks on you. But no, and I think all of us generally, hand on heart, are scared of that chapel room in that place.
Oh, I bet. We'll have to check that out on your TikTok. But
Please do, yeah.
Hayleigh, what do you think happens to people when they die, after they die?
I like to think they go to their loved ones. I really want to believe they go to their loved ones. When my father was passing away, he was talking to his grandfather. Now, his grandfather died when he was a young boy, so I never met him. Then other people, especially now, on TikTok Live, people keep saying, well, their loved one was speaking to somebody who passed. And once you look into it and speak to people, a lot of people, when they're passing away, sadly, they go back to seeing their loved ones. And I want to believe that so much, that when we pass over, our loved ones are waiting for us. That's what I want.
Would you almost associate that with almost like their deceased family members are welcoming them to the other side, comforting them? Yeah, comforting them to just pass on.
Yeah, that gives me comfort, and I know a lot of people think the same. And I think when it comes to our time, if I passed away with that in my mind, I think I'd probably be a bit more accepting than what I would have been if I thought there was just darkness.
Right, exactly. So where can people, our viewers, find more about you, your TikTok, your Instagram, to see what you're doing?
TikTok and Instagram. Somebody told me to do a YouTube channel, but I'm a caveman when it comes to technology. I'm still trying to figure out everything. So my partner's going to help with YouTube, but I've got to be honest, I'm still trying to figure out Instagram and TikTok. So it's going to be a little while before I even get to grips with a different app on my phone.
Okay, so your TikTok is at Mortuary Tech, and your Instagram as well is at Mortuary Tech, to learn more about the mortuary business. And thank you so much for providing this kind of education on something that a lot of people are afraid to ask questions about. I appreciate you being here. Yeah, thank you, and good luck in your career, and keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate the opportunity to speak, because it is a taboo subject, isn't it? As I'm sure you find in your field as well. It's not something that's spoken about enough, and yet it's going to happen to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, thank you again for watching today's episode of Talking Decon. Make sure that you find Hayleigh Davis on Mortuary Tech on TikTok and Instagram, and learn more about this interesting business. Have a great day.